Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the 2016 Fed's Executive Debate as part of the Fed's Executive election for the 2016-2017 year. We are now about to begin the debate. I will quickly run over the format of this debate. We will go position by position, so we will start with the VP Education candidates. We will then move on to the VP Internal candidates, then the VP Operations and Finance candidates, and lastly the President candidates. Each candidate will be able to make a 30-second, not 30-minute, opening statement. This will be followed by questions directed at each candidate that will be specific to their platform points. They will have 1 minute to respond to the question. All opposing candidates will have 30 seconds to offer their rebuttal. There will be then a 2-minute or 3-minute period of open debate depending on how many candidates there are. This will then be followed by 30 seconds of closing remarks by all candidates for that position. We will then move on to the next position. Does that seem clear? Any questions? Cool. We'll do a quick round of introductions of who we are before we proceed to the actual debate. The one thing I forgot to mention was before the closing statements, we will take 2 audience questions either from the audience here or from social media if there are any questions before we move to the closing remarks by each candidate. We'll just do a quick round of introductions. My name is Mazi Yasin. I'm the current Vice President Internal for the Federation of Students.
My name is Stefan Hamadeh. I'm the current Vice President Education for the Federation of Students.
Hi, my name is Danielle Bird. I was the Fed's President in the year 2014-2015.
And I'm Carly, and I'm the current VP Operations and Finance for Fed.
Okay, so we're starting off with Vice President Education. I believe that one of the candidates, Kinsey, is unable to make it, so one of his teammates is going to give opening remarks for him.
I just wanted to say a quick remarks about Kinsey. He's coming from People's Voice, and he was sadly unable to make it. He had a family emergency. He is running for VP Education, and one of his platforms is that he wants to freeze tuition and help to hopefully alleviate the stress of tuition. Thank you.
Okay, go ahead, Sarah, with your opening remarks.
So I'm Sarah. I'm running with Team Impact, and I'm running for Vice President of Education. So I have a bunch of stuff on my platform. Some of the highlights are I want to improve resources for mental health and academics, freeze tuition, and improve co-op opportunities.
Okay, so we'll now go into the questions for each candidate. The first question is directed at Sarah. What would you like to see change with your Mental Health and Academics Advisory Committee?
So I think we already do a lot for mental health at the University of Waterloo, but I don't think we do enough. So I know that our policies and procedures around grievances and petitions have some issues around sensitivity towards people with mental health, and I'd like to see those adjusted, and also just improving and creating new resources for students.
Okay, so you still have 30 seconds, and you also have 1 minute for open debate as well.
Cool. Okay. I want to bring together people from all different faculties, so in different areas of campus. So in previous years, when they've tried to do something similar to this, they've not brought in together different groups of people. It's mainly been at the staff level, and I want to include students in this conversation because we're the ones that benefit from these resources. And I want to improve just all the options.
Okay, thank you. So this next question will be for Kinsey, so you'll have 30 seconds for rebuttal. As he's not here, he won't be able to answer the question, unfortunately. Okay, so as per our nonpartisanship policy, Be it resolved, the Federation of Students, as represented by the Executive, agrees so as long as they hold office to adhere to the following principles regarding external political organizations. We will not, in any capacity, be it electronic or in person, expressly endorse a municipal, regional, provincial, or federal candidate or party. If elected, would you continue running for president of the Ontario Provincial Conservative Youth Association? And if you would, how would you reconcile these two roles? You have 30 seconds to speak and then 1 minute for open debate.
Okay, so obviously Kinsey is not here to answer this question, so I'm not sure what he would say to that. But I do think that I have Kinsey on Facebook. I see that he posts a lot about Conservative Party and that it doesn't seem really nonpartisan.
All right, so for the third question, for Sarah, do you think it's more important for us to provide students, so this is on off-campus housing, do you think it's more important for us to provide students the capacity to handle the concerns themselves or to advocate to preventing these issues from happening?
I definitely think both, but I think that right now we don't have the resources that available for students to help them when they're in those situations, and like there's been a lot of recent issues with housing companies that students didn't know where to turn and how to get help. So I would like to see them have more options relating to legal services from the off-campus housing office for help for that. I also think that they should be able to find these resources easily. So having them well advertised, having them easily available, and making sure that all students know about them and know that they're available.
Okay. All right. So this question number 4 is for Kinsey. So in your platform, you talk about increasing co-op experiences by attending career conferences and fairs and lobbying for more funding for the University of Waterloo. There are several CCA employees attending events to create co-op opportunities and a government relations department in the university dedicated to increasing funding for the university. How will you, beyond what these full-time roles do, to accomplish your goals?
So obviously Kinsey isn't here, so he can't answer the question. But I want to increase co-op opportunities a different way by lobbying the government to create incentives for to improve jobs and create more job opportunities. So via tax cuts and grants.
Okay, so the next question is for Sarah. So in light of the increase by 9% of international student tuition yesterday, what will you do to try to fight back against these increases?
So I was at the board meeting yesterday where they made this decision, and I'm definitely against that decision because I think it's very problematic for students. So obviously it's going to be difficult to fight them on the decision they've already made, but I think fighting for the tuition freeze at the government level with USA is helpful, sends a message that we want tuitions to not be so expensive and to make education accessible. And then I would also just argue that in the future, when we're coming up with a budget for the following year, that we push harder for them to freeze tuition and not raise it, because education is important for everybody and should be accessible, and having it this expensive is just insane.
Okay, so the next question is for Kinsey. So your platform doesn't mention any academic issues. What do you think the most important on-campus academic issue is to students, and how would you go about improving it?
So I don't know what Kinsey would say, but on my platform, I think the most important academic issues are relating to the tuition freeze, which I already talked a little bit about, improving co-op opportunities, and the mental health and academics, because if mental health is really important to me personally, and then also I believe that if students aren't having the resources available to them, then they can't be successful, and then we don't have a great university where everyone's doing great.
Okay, so now I'd invite anybody from the audience to ask a question.
Hi, my name's Rebecca. I'm the Academic Affairs Commissioner, so I've had some experience with this. I guess my question is, on your platform, you say you want to have employer evaluations. I'm wondering how that would be any different from what Waterloo Works is already working on. Thanks.
So I'm not familiar with Waterloo Works, as it's still in the works. Hasn't been developed, completed yet. I know it's in development, but it's also been there's been a lot of delays with it, and I'd really like to push to see it finished, and maybe the co-op evaluations for employers are part of that process. But either way, pushing for those to be to come to fruition with or without Waterloo Works.
Okay, so we have a question from social media from Sasha Korsner. So Feds presently lacks a federal advocacy strategy. How will you get our voices heard by government? And I'm assuming he means federal government.
So I was actually talking to Sasha about this yesterday at the Cupcakes and Candidates event. The reality of it is I don't have a lot of experience with the federal government, and the majority of my platform does focus on the provincial government. But I recognize that I don't know a lot, and I'd be very willing to learn from the other people who have experience, the full-time staff working with the university and such.
Okay, so you now have 30 seconds for closing remarks. Go ahead.
So I think that I am the best candidate available for the position. I have a lot of experience with advocacy, and I'm passionate about helping students, and I'd like to see a lot of my ideas come to fruition and improve life for Waterloo for all students.
Thank you. I'll pass this over now to Moz.
The next portion of the debate will be for the VP internal candidates. So can the VP internal candidates please have a seat at the table? All right, thank you for joining us, VP internal candidates. So we will begin with opening remarks. Unfortunately, Amanda, who's running with Team People's Voice, is also unable to make it. So we will have Jeremy make opening remarks on her behalf. Jeremy and all other VP internal candidates, you have 30 seconds for your opening remarks.
Thank you very much, Maz. So I'm going to just briefly say a little bit about what Amanda plans to do in a very overview type of way. As part of People's Voice, she's really passionate about making sure that the club's voice is heard. Something that she's going to be working actually with me as VP Operations and Finance is to ensure that Portal integrates with clubs better and the Fed's website integrates with clubs better so that clubs can have a better way to promote their amazing events. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Deanna, you may make your opening remarks.
Hello, my name is Deanna. I'm running with Team Impact, and I've been involved with Waterloo since my first year here. I'm now in my 4th year. I've been involved with housing through open houses. I've been involved with feds through Welcome Week, Wrap-Up Week, services, the Volunteer Center, as well as I've been involved with orientation heavily as a coordinator for Arts Choice and previously a FOC member as well.
Go ahead, Victoria.
So hi, my name is Victoria. I also have a lot of experience around campus, both with feds and the various departments. My platform focuses on opening the channels of communication between feds and all of the undergraduate students on campus, improving the feds.ca website, connecting with satellite campuses, and making health services more accessible to students through improving their website, as well as lobbying to hire more counselors and make the wait times better.
Cool, thank you. The first question is regarding clubs, and it is directed at Amanda. Since Amanda's not here, the 2 other candidates will have 30 seconds to offer their own response, and there will be an open debate period. The question is, your platform mentions that contact with clubs should be constant and that the VP internal will work together with all clubs to make sure that they're always growing and progressing. The Federation of Students has more than 240 affiliated clubs that are supported by the club's manager and the Fed's club support team volunteers that are in constant contact with all clubs. How do you plan to work together with all 200 or so clubs above and beyond what is currently being done? Deanna, you may go first.
To improve on the current situation with the clubs, I think we do have an excellent staff who are associated with it, as well as the club support team is a great resource. But I've noticed online, I was looking at the club's databases last night, and I think that improving feds.ca for one would be really beneficial, as well as having updated and helpful newsletters throughout the term rather than just random basic facts that people already probably know.
Okay, so this is also a key part of my own platform, is connecting with clubs better. So what I'm hoping to have happen is, with the feds.ca improvements, is building a clubs database that is current, up to date, that every semester as clubs hand in their forms to say that they're still a club, they would also say their information online is still correct and provide updated ways to contact them. That way students can easily access what clubs are on campus and who they can connect with.
Now an open debate period. You may have open debate if you like. If you don't want to, you may choose to not utilize this time and we can proceed to the next question. Okay, we'll move on to the next question. The next question is regarding the Fed's website, and it is directed at Victoria. Your platform talks extensively about the implementation of a new Fed's website. Seeing as the Fed's website is the responsibility of the Fed's IT and marketing departments, and that these departments are overseen by the VP Operations and Finance, not the VP Internal, how do you plan on accomplishing this platform commitment if you are elected VP Internal?
So while I am aware that it is definitely under the VP of Operations Finance's portfolio to take care of that, I think that it so directly impacts the VP internal role and the clubs and societies that it's just as much part of our responsibility to take care of it. So I'd want to work very closely with the person elected into that position to make sure that that becomes a reality and give as much input about how to improve it for clubs and students on campus trying to access the information that they need to and learn about feds.
I guess I don't think I can ask you the question, but I would look into asking you about how you think that your role specifically can influence that and what ways you would go about actually doing that in practice. I'm not sure if you get to rebuttal, I'm sorry about that. But yeah, so just like the actual role, and because the VP Internal has so many other aspects to their position, that if you would actually be able to find the time to focus on the website.
You both have a period of open debate to debate this question or any topic you like.
Okay, so in answer to that, I think that because I've made it such a focus in my platform and in my position that I would actively make the time and effort to focus on making the Fed's website improve, because again, I think that any work that I can do for the clubs any work that I can do for the societies needs to start somewhere, and I think that starting point is the Fed's website, because that is where students in this day and age, that's the first place they come to. They come to the Fed's website to see what is Feds, what can I do with them, how can I get involved on this campus. So unless that is corrected and made available and updated consistently, then it's impossible for students to really feel that they know Feds and are represented properly.
Yep, we still have time.
To continue on to my previous statement about it not being within your specific realm, I think that potentially it could look like two people who are in the executive role are working on the same project, and if you are so dedicated to it, then it may come across that you're not focusing on other aspects as well, and that two executives are focusing on the same project when it really should be under only one.
You have 20 seconds left, Victoria. That's for your speaking turn.
Then on that note, I think what I would do is certainly work to lay out the plans and the information that I think needs to be there, what for the sake of clubs and societies needs to be there, and I'd bring that to the VP of Finance and give them all the support that they could possibly need to make that a reality.
I understand that you would provide support because that's the role of the executive team, is to provide support and management. I'm wondering about specific things that you think the Vice President of Operations and Finance may not realize, because I think there would be extensive surveys and extensive questions being asked regarding the improvements that need to be made that can be done directly through that role. So just one about what you can do that they couldn't do on their own.
Okay, Victoria, you have 3 seconds left to say whatever you'd like to say.
I know clubs as the VP internal, so that's what I could bring.
Time's up. Deanna, you have 5 seconds left. Okay, we'll proceed to the next question. The next question is regarding volunteer policies and procedures. It is directed at Deanna. Deanna, your platform mentions that you will revisit the volunteer appreciation policies to ensure that volunteers are properly recognized for their time and service. Given that this will likely mean an increased budget allocation, how would you acquire the appropriate amount of funding to meet this goal?
I would like to look into all the different options before an increase in budget. My plan would be to look through all the different aspects of Feds and not make cuts, but figure out where we're spending money that we shouldn't be, or where we can find more cost-effective situations to make sure that not only volunteers are appreciated in full, but also to make sure that for their time they are appreciated appropriately. So if a volunteer, I looked over the volunteer policies and the appreciation levels, and they're a little bit vague in certain areas, and you're not really sure sometimes which position a volunteer would fall in. I learned that through being the coordinator for the Volunteer Center. I'm not sure sometimes where my volunteers would fall in because they don't meet certain requirements that are listed at each level. So I think reanalyzing that and figuring out for a majority of the positions that are offered through Feds, what positions should get what kind of appreciation.
Victoria, you have 30 seconds to rebuttal.
So you mentioned that you wouldn't be looking to make cuts or anything like that, but then how can you in any way change what volunteers would get if you're not looking to cut anywhere else? A redistribution is still cutting from somewhere to add that to the volunteers.
Yeah. This is now open debate.
Oh. When I say redistribution, I want to also look at just different strategies of spending. I want to maintain the same quality, so I would look through all the different options. Like I mentioned, like for example, a referendum would be the very last resort, and I don't think that is necessary from what I've understood through Feds and what I've done during my time here. So I don't think that I would look to increase the budget, and I think that appreciation can be done in a lot of different ways, and valuing appreciation, not just like a monetary thing or just giving pizza or something like that, but really figuring out what ways, even like a resume take-home like workshop, something that can really help volunteers and take something home for them.
Victoria, you have 1 minute of open debate time.
I think that's a good policy, and hopefully no matter who is moving forward in this position, it's something that can be implemented for any volunteers because they definitely do deserve the appreciation. They're what makes feds really function and support students.
Deanna, you have 24 seconds left. Okay. We'll move on to the next question if that's okay with all candidates. The next question is regarding the UW portal. It is directed at Amanda. The question says, your platform mentions that you will work alongside portal so that club events are known are not just to members but to the general public so that everyone can partake in events. Given that Feds and the university have worked together to create a clubs widget on the portal that will allow clubs to have their events advertised to all students on the UW portal, do you feel that there is more to be done? If so, what do you plan to do? Since Amanda is not here, the two other candidates will have 30 seconds to respond.
So I definitely think that it is an area that there's always room for improvement in things, and that with Portal, I would like to see that if we were able to improve the website, that it would be easily connected, that when clubs submit forms saying that they're having an event, it's automatically added to the Portal widget, and students can pick and choose what sort of club events that they might hear about and be able to better attend events around campus.
I think that it's not so much about how Feds can work with Portal and the connection between the two, but also just the recognition of Portal and having Feds promote it through their own purposes and not just show the Feds calendar, the event calendar, but also maybe advertise it as a Portal feature, say, posting that on different social medias and our website rather than just on our own internal website.
Okay, you both have 1 minute each to talk about, for open debate. You can talk about this question or anything you like. All right, we can now proceed to the next question if that's okay with both candidates. The next question regarding is directed at Victoria. It's about your platform point that talks about to meet your exec night. The question is, your platform mentions that the Fed's exec should open their doors by having a night every semester where they can answer student questions about their role. How would you differentiate this event from the Fed's open house that happens every semester, and how do you plan on accomplishing this?
So I think with the Feds Open House is a wonderful initiative that really helps a lot of students learn about Feds, but it also is so all-encompassing that students don't necessarily have the chance to really connect with individual exec positions and know their exec candidates and what it is that they can do for them and what it is they are accomplishing for them throughout the semester. So I'd like to see it be a much more easy, sort of a casual thing where it's advertised and it's told to students that this is happening, and then students can come and discuss with the executives. And if it's something that ends up being a lot more popular, which would be fantastic, I'd like to see it move to more of a situation that we're kind of in now, where students are able to really pose the questions that they want answered from their executives to them that can easily be answered in a back and forth open communication style.
Regarding a direct quote from your platform, open their doors, what do you think is different about office hours? Why do you think people attend meet your exec night rather than attend office hours? Would it be just as beneficial to have events that are already happening and have exec there that people can talk to because they're always open and around, rather than having a meet your exec night?
You have time of 1 minute each for open debate on this question or any other topic.
So I think that a lot of students don't realize that there are, in fact, office hours for the exec. It's not something that we really advertise particularly. It's not something we put a lot of time and effort into telling people that it exists. We tell them, but it's not a huge focus because it's consistent, which I think I'd still like to see happen, but I think I'd like to have a specific time that we really push to students that, hey, this is a time where if you weren't aware or didn't have time to come throughout the rest of the semester, here's a night where you can really do that. And I would love to see execs at more events where they can connect with students, but I also know that with the time commitment of the positions that can be difficult, but the more that students can see their execs and know what they're doing, the better.
Yep, you have 1 minute, Deanna.
I think that potentially at an event there are a lot of interest in this, that a lot of the exec could get overwhelmed by how many students want to talk to them potentially if it goes to the way you're saying it potentially could, so that it may not even be really meaningful, accurate conversations if you have to like rush through to get to the students that are in front of you. Whereas I think a better idea would be to push the office hours more and really emphasize their purpose, and that execs make time out of their day to make sure that they are available during this time, and that it's not that they're doing something else and not that they have to juggle like 10 different people, and because it's every week at the same times, it gives more chance for more students to come and not feel rushed.
You have 23 seconds, Victoria.
So I think that that's a very valid point. I would like to see the office hours be much more used and connected with students, and I'd like to see the online portion of execs be able to have that communication more in depth with any individual student happen. And I still think, though, that some kind of an organized debate like we're having now allows students to really connect with their execs.
You still have 20 seconds left, Deanna. All right. If it's good with both candidates, we'll move on to the next question. The next question is regarding campus safety, and it is directed at Deanna. In winter 2014, the Federation Students' Council released a campus safety report that highlighted several recommendations on campus safety. Which of these recommendations would you make a priority to address if elected VP internal?
The biggest recommendation that I took away from the campus safety report was about creating safer roads for students to walk across Ring Road, so creating blocks in the road. I think that an area that has been really missed was the crosswalk, or lack of crosswalk, between EV3 and the college's bridge. Students cross there all the time, and I can't believe that there's not some sort of system to slow down cars, especially it's just right around the corner, so people may be going really fast and not realize that there's students crossing there, especially if they're newer to campus. So implementing some sort of speed bump or stop sign or crosswalk would be really beneficial in that area.
You have 30 seconds to rebuttal, Victoria.
Can you think of any reason why this hasn't been done already? Because it's something that's clearly been talked about and discussed, and we keep saying, oh, we need crosswalks, and yet we still are so severely lacking in them.
We're now in open debate. Each candidate has 1 minute.
I think that on the other side of campus, there's lots of crosswalks. I'm not sure if you've seen the side near the plaza, but there's 4 different crosswalks within just a small amount of space, and then the other side of campus seems to be lacking a lot more. So just maybe they either haven't gotten around to it yet, or they think that's not a priority. I'd like to push that is a priority. I know lots of students, specifically art students and other students crossing to the colleges, use that a lot. So that's a main concern.
I would definitely say I agree. I'd like to see it happen, but one of my concerns is that possibly the financial feasibility of making this, like they have done on that side of campus, where they have the sort of fence-off area that forces students to use the specific crosswalks and encourages them and helps stop cars from passing them at other locations. Do you think there'd be any kind of an issue with that, or what it is that feds can actually do to make this a reality?
You still have 30 seconds left.
I think that to make it a reality, feds should do what they are supposed to do, which is represent the student voice. So bringing to the university the concern that there is nothing there to really prevent it. And in regards to the financial question you raised, I think that it's not that expensive potentially to paint the ground. I'm not saying they need to fence it off so that it's only one spot you can go to, but people, if they see a crosswalk, they're probably going to walk on the crosswalk because they know that cars will slow down for them.
You also have 30 seconds left, Victoria. We're good? Deanna, you still have 7 seconds left. Do you wish to use that? Perfect. We'll move on to the next question. The next question is directed at Amanda. It's regarding societies and satellite campuses. A large part of the VP internal's job is to improve relations with the societies and satellite campuses. What do you feel are the most important issues facing satellite campuses and societies, and how do you plan on addressing them? So since Amanda is not here, you both will have 30 seconds each to respond.
I think that connecting Waterloo as one university rather than splitting it up into different societies, different campuses, and including the colleges as well, is a main problem with our school spirit. And I think that including them in conversations and planning events like that are cross campus with other groups is what will make this a reality through the Fed's VP internal position and including them in decision making.
So this is also a significant part of my platform. I actually took the chance last week and was able to go to the Stratford campus and discuss with them what they felt they were lacking in and what kind of representation they needed from feds. A big concern of theirs was that they really want more consistent transportation back and forth to the university. So that's something I really would like to look into the possibility of, and definitely on campus with the societies is bridging that gap, having meetings with them early on in my term as VP Internal and connecting that gap between feds and the various societies together.
You now both have 1 minute each for open debate.
I think that it's important to say that Feds doesn't control the societies in any way. They're their own entities, and that different societies need different support. So I think providing an equitable amount of support to each group so that one group who doesn't need as much can get the support that they need from Feds, whether it be just marketing resources or something like that. Whereas other groups that are newer, like the GBDA Society at the Stratford campus, they're much newer and they probably need a lot more support to help start themselves off and be a stronger note.
So I would also like to focus on sort of connecting the societies together, not just with feds, because I think that's something that doesn't always happen. I think would really improve the feeling of UWaterloo as a whole campus, is having the different societies working together on events and on initiatives, because so many things affect students from so many different faculties that having them connect together would be really beneficial.
You have 30 seconds left, Deanna.
I think just sharing knowledge is really important too. We are so siloed as a university, like I mentioned before, and that I think that being able to share our knowledge of just maybe different external partners or different resources that we have or different things that we're doing as, for example, the different services. SCI, for example, I talked to last week, and they said they have a lot of initiatives that they want to take part in, and they think that if they could partner with the societies and the colleges and the satellite campuses, that they could do even more.
Victoria, you have 38 seconds left.
Another part that I'd like to see happen, a part of my platform, is kind of connecting the clubs that are here on campus with the satellite campuses, because they don't really have the opportunity to take part in clubs the same way or to engage in the activities of the clubs that we have. I mean, we do have over 240 affiliated clubs, and how many of them are on our satellite campuses? They just aren't able to connect with them, and I'd like to really bridge that gap and allow students that are on our satellite campuses to have just as much out of their student union and their student experience as our students on the main campus.
Deanna, you have 2 seconds left. All right, seeing as both candidates seem to be done with this question, we'll move on to the next one. The next question is directed at Victoria. It is about new clubs. Your platform talks about streamlining the new club approval process. How do you plan on streamlining the new club approval process?
Okay, so I think that I do have some experience with this. I started a new club myself last winter, the Random Acts of Kindness Club, and I know that it was an interesting process, to say the least. It's something that's been raised of concern to me, is that now we need to have 15 instead of just 7 members to start a club, which definitely poses a problem for a lot of new clubs that are just getting off the ground, and they have a lot of interest, but maybe they aren't able to connect with other students that might have interest. So I'd like to see perhaps a sort of a posting of sorts on the website that says these are kind of the upcoming clubs that are applying for club status, and then other people are able to see that and join in on that and make that 15-member requirement happen a lot easier, or re-examining why that 15-member requirement has happened.
Okay, you have 30 seconds to rebuttal.
So how would exactly you think that it would work on, again, the feds.ca website, that being able to see which clubs are starting when really they haven't been approved yet? At what stage do you think that should happen? Because if you start something too early and you advertise it, then it could be false advertising and then people can get upset. And how would you work through that?
All right, we're now in the open debate period. 1 minute for each candidate.
So what I'd like to see is that any individual who's looking to start a club can submit a very basic form that right now they need to submit their full club constitution, and right now I'd like to see them be able to submit sort of in a nutshell, this is what their club is looking to do. Perhaps not have the real rules of it, but just say that I want to start a club that loves pie, and that's what your club is about, and then other people can express similar interest, and then they can work together to make that a reality. That we make it very clear from the very beginning that these aren't clubs that exist, these are just clubs that are recommended ideas for clubs, people that are looking to find like-minded individuals to start a club. That's something that could easily be displayed in the Fed's main office as well, that on a board of some sort, that students can come in and see new clubs.
I think that the reason that there's a process for having such stringent rules, that you have to have certain members sign, and you have to have certain rules and how you're going to have your debates and elections, and all the different aspects that you say make it really difficult or more challenging to start a club. I think that's also really important because that puts the onus on the student who wants to start it to take it seriously, because we want clubs to be taken seriously. Although they're very enjoyable and fun, and a lot of them have such great enjoyable activities, they are still like a serious group, and I think that if you take the steps away from it, it becomes too lighthearted, and that potentially that could have negative ramifications.
You have 12 seconds left, Victoria.
I wouldn't want to remove any of the current existing process. I'd just like to add this new pre-step that, while it doesn't make it easier to start a new club, it makes it easier for students to connect and have the support to start their new clubs.
You have 17 seconds left. Deanna. You're good? Okay. We'll move on to our last question. Then we'll proceed to any questions from the audience or social media. The last question is directed at Deanna. Deanna, your platform mentions that you would like to carry out a services review. What do you think are the most pressing issues facing Fed services right now?
As a service coordinator, I'm a bit biased in this, but I think that the Fed services are vital, and I'm sure I'm not the only person who thinks that. The definition of a Fed service is a need that is not met by the university. Feds creates the service to overcome that need, and I think that a review of the services and what they offer and what they have the potential to offer, as well as looking through their budget and making sure that they're getting what they need and what they deserve, and that nothing is overlooked through each service, no matter how big or small, how established or new they are. I also believe that with the growth of the services, they'll need to increase their budget, and I don't want to, like I mentioned before, have a referendum or fee increase at all. If we can figure out now how we can reallocate some money for the growth of certain groups that are just starting, that would be really important.
Go ahead, we're in open debate. Rebuttal.
So you're mentioning kind of a service review. Who would that be for? Would that be something that's released to the students, or would that be exclusively for internal within Feds to know what the needs are? Where would you see that coming from?
We're now in open debate. You have 1 minute each.
I think that while it's very important for internal purposes, like just for general HR information, I think that having it released to students is another form of transparency, so that people can understand the different services budgets, for example, as well as what the different services provides. I think advertising that is really important, because then it can help advertise the services and all they can do for students. I want to maintain, of course, the quality of service through this.
You have 1 minute from time for open debate, Victoria, if you choose to use it. Okay. We will now proceed to questions from the member of the audience or from social media. We actually do have a question from Twitter. Just a reminder to folks watching it on live stream, you can ask candidates questions using the hashtag UWVotes. That's UWVotes. You can ask questions to the candidates, and we'll make an effort to make sure those questions are asked. So the question from Twitter is, if elected VP internal, what will both of you do to improve, well, I guess one of you will get elected to be VP internal. What will you do to improve school spirit? So Deanna, you may go ahead. You have 30 seconds to respond.
I think my big push for school spirit will be to unify Waterloo as a campus. Like I mentioned before, that we're segregated from the colleges, we're segregated from different off-campus satellite campuses, and the societies themselves are their own groups. So I think working as a facilitator to make sure that everyone feels that they're part of Waterloo and everyone is getting what they deserve out of the Fed's fee because they're all students at Waterloo.
So I would like to see that, yes, a lot of the student societies are brought together, that the satellite campuses feel that they're truly a part of U-Waterloo. I'd also like to see maybe bringing back sort of the black and gold day, that it's sort of faded a little bit from memory, I think, that not as many people are aware of it or participate in it. I'd like to make that a more consistent thing that happens and make it both athletics, but also really reaching out to the societies and to students on campus to take part in that sort of an initiative.
Thank you both. Does anyone in the audience have any questions for the VP internal candidates? All right, going once, going twice. Do you have any other questions? All right, we'll now proceed to closing remarks. Victoria, I'll invite you to go ahead with your closing remarks. You have 30 seconds.
I think that I'm a very good candidate for this role. I have a lot of experience both within Feds and with the various departments around and across campus, especially with my platform to fix health services. I've worked there for over 2 years. I really know the ins and outs of what happens there. I really have a passion for U-Waterloo, and I want to make this campus as amazing a place as I believe it to be and that I know that I have had the opportunity to experience.
Go ahead, Deanna.
Like I mentioned in my opening statements, I've been heavily involved with Waterloo through different departments on campus, and I think that it's really important, the role of the VP Internal, because what we do here matters outside of just the academics. It doesn't matter if you're just attending an event or you're helping plan an event or you're getting to use new skills and develop your skills and become a more well-rounded student. I think what we do here matters, and I'd like to push through that.
All right, I'd like to thank the VP internal candidates. We will now be proceeding to... Next up are the VP operations and finance candidates. Please come and have a seat.
Okay, so welcome VP Operations and Finance candidates. You each have 30 seconds for opening statements, and we'll let Brian go first.
Hey everybody, my name is Brian. I'm a fourth-year student in Recreation and Sport Business doing a minor in HR. The reason why I'm running for this position is I've been involved in various parts of campus, whether it be through orientation. I was AHS FOC in 2014. I also helped develop a Warrior Tribe initiative last year for Orientation Week. In 2015 for Orientation Week, and I really think these broad experiences and these different areas, my connections across campus, will help me bring a vision into Feds.
Thank you. Jeremy, you have 30 seconds.
Hi, my name is Jeremy. I'm in my fourth year of Arts and Business Co-op, and I'm majoring in Peace and Conflict Studies and minoring in Speech Communication. And my background has really been involved with Orientation Week and also been involved with bringing car sharing to campus. And for me, that was really what showed me that bringing Feds together and bringing letting people know about what Feds is was really important to my platform. Thank you.
Thank you. So the first question is for Brian. Your platform includes creation of an Officer of Advancement position that will essentially pay for itself. In the past fiscal year, Welcome Week alone brought in over $50,000 in sponsorship, with orientation bringing over $10,000 more. For this role to make Feds more money than they already bring in, plus enough to cover the salary for this position will have to receive over $100,000 in sponsorship, which is more than double what we currently bring in. How would you ensure that this is possible, and what would you do if this employee did not make more than $100,000?
Yeah, great question. Thank you. So for starters, this position was definitely to start getting discussion rolling about different services and different areas where we can support our services more with sponsorship, and different areas on campus where we can capitalize on bringing in more revenue to support students. Great question in terms of the finances. In terms of partnering with places like, for example, for the SLC couches that I'm looking to plan on doing, that would cost the university or Fed's money to implement. Using that external partner will help, I guess, take away from the bottom line. And in the end, there's a lot of money out there to be partnered with. It's just how you use the approach and how you pair with a company to get that money from those companies. So it's really a marketing endeavor. And in terms of, sorry, there's a lot of feedback. And in terms of dealing with it, I really think it's a combined effort with our current general manager and the staff to ensure that the needs are met.
Thank you. Jeremy, you have 30 seconds for rebuttal.
I guess my background in sponsorships, I definitely think it's important to bring in external money, but how do you ensure that the Fed's money is appropriate with the sponsorship? Like the sponsor is in itself a good fit. What would be kind of like a screening process to make sure that the people being brought onto campus to help are actually people that we want on campus helping us?
Thank you. You each have 1 minute for open debate.
Great. So the screening process is an excellent point that you bring up. I think that's the reason why there is 4 executives within the Federation of Students, so that you can have those discussions in terms of potential sponsors, similar to how the university operates with the officer advancement positions on campus, to ensure that the partnerships are screened effectively so that they do match.
You have 1 minute each.
I do believe sponsorship is actually a really good way to go. Personally, I'd kind of like to ensure with that the sponsorship happens just more with like a student focus, with how people can engage with that sponsorship, because there's, we see like with our social responsibility on campus, and I just want to make sure that we maybe partner with like a sustainability focus for when we're looking in these partnerships.
Definitely, and I think students use a variety of services and they have a variety of needs because we are a very diverse community here. And to fit that corporate social responsibility, a lot of organizations are looking to do the same. It's somebody who would be looking at getting something in return from partnering with us on campus, and that would definitely be a point to consider during sponsorship phases.
You still have 30 seconds, Jeremy, and 20 seconds, Brian. Okay, thank you. The next question is for Jeremy. So as the VP Operations and Finance, you have control over the Fed's fee, the Fed's administered fee, which make up the Fed's budget. In your platform, you say that you will ensure tuition is being allocated fairly for students. However, the tuition for the 2016-2017 year was set yesterday at the University Board of Governors. So how will you ensure that tuition is being allocated fairly?
So I guess with Fed's positions, I guess we're always planning in the future, and I guess we're always planning to look at future budgets, because obviously you can't change something that has been done already. But as I think we were talking when we met, is there's always ability to make, I think, tweaks and changes. So it's ensuring that the changes that when we come into office are made to set with the priorities that when we talk to students they want to hear and see. So right now there's no real direct result. It's planning for the future.
Brian, you have 30 seconds.
So I just want to clarify, are we talking about the Fed's fee itself or tuition as a whole for students? This is for you, sorry.
It's the way the Fed's fee, because part of the Fed's fee is what we're like Feds, and then also it factors into tuition.
Great. So with planning for the future, by the time that you go through students and get their responses and initiate that long-term planning, it's going to take quite a number of months to actually figure out what students want, and you're never really going to have a clear consensus on what specific service will fit students. So how do you plan on collecting this data and then ensuring that it's implemented for the long-term plan for feds.
So some of my experience with student car share has really been like getting out there on the ground and really talking to big groups of people and really, I mean, making it known that there's something going on. So whether that's through social media, whether that's through a survey, surveys can be accessible if they're quick enough and short enough and have an incentive enough to do it. So I guess that would really be the beginning of my term, would be, you know, quickly going around and making sure we get enough of a buy-in that people feel like they have a voice, and also just walking around.
With the amount of services and commercial services that feds uses, it's not really viable to have it in such a short survey to ensure that all of the areas are capitalized and you receive feedback on. How are you going to implement interest or provide incentive for students to even consider answering a lengthy survey that will need to be done to ensure that all of this information is collected efficiently, but also with a lot of integrity, and ensure that it's accurate as well?
Something that I'd actually like to, I want to look into, and something that I don't want to make any promises, obviously, because promises, it's broken promises, but something that I'd really like to look into is having an app or having a more direct kind of form of feedback. So if something's going on and you have like a quick kind of app that you can say, kind of like a question, yes or no, similar to a survey but more secure, I think that would be a way that we could really get the feedback quickly.
That's time. You've 34 seconds left, Brian.
Great. So with the idea of an app, where could we get the finances to develop this app? And by the time that this app is developed or we pay for it, ensuring that this gets out to students and encouraging them to download it onto their smartphones or their mobile platforms. Kind of how is this really going to come into fruition? Because there's such a gap, especially for a lot of students, to find what is going on and how they can give their feedback.
Thank you. And you're out of time, Jeremy, so thank you. The next question is for Brian. One of your platform points is to open a Warrior Tuck shop where you would sell black and gold swag. Given that both the Warrior and the University of Waterloo logos are proprietary to the university, and that Retail Services is the only entity allowed to sell branded clothing on campus, how would you convince Retail Services to end their monopoly and let you operate this business?
Awesome. So at the end of the day, I think that it's really important that the university and Retail Services realizes that they're here for students, and the reason why they make money is because of students. And asking a student to pay $70 or $80 for a hoodie that just has the Warrior logo on it is a little bit insane, in my opinion, especially when we're all on really tight budgets. At the end of the day, I think raising the student's voice and advocating to the university about why it's important to have alternate options and to provide students with accessible resources on campus.
Jeremy, you have 30 seconds.
No, I mean, when you're looking at student fees and funding, why would clothing be something that students would care about when they don't necessarily, when they are on a tight budget and branded clothing is a luxury, I guess you could say? Why is that something that we should focus our resources on?
You each have 1 minute for open debate.
From a lot of feedback that I've gained from students is one thing that we're missing on campus is this, a community identity. So school spirit is a buzzword that we throw around. And students look to purchase this black and gold swag, but when they walk in and they realize that they have to spend half of their paycheck for the week or part of OSAP or sacrifice their meals for the week or a day even, that has a big impact on what they want to do. Students do want to purchase these items, but it's putting them at an affordable rate so that they can have access to them without having to sacrifice anything else.
You still have a minute.
So I guess with the overhead that of different locations, why go for a physical person location when there's already so many different physical places and feds that we're already looking for more space for things? Why would we take up physical location with another store when we could, let's say, look at something like an online solution or which would lower the price and then not have, because overhead is really the issue in this, is how we're going to fund that and how we're going to make it cheaper so that students can actually pay for it versus just things. Where's that money coming to make it cheaper?
Brian, you have 26 seconds left.
So there isn't really a push to have a specific space. It's more to find out what students' needs are, and nowhere kind of in my platform does it say that it's going to be a specific space. However, it's working with feds, and then also it could be with athletics as a partnership to develop an area or an online resource for students to be able to buy these items.
Jeremy, you have 22 seconds remaining. You good? Okay. The next question is for Jeremy. In your platform, you state that you will work with the university on decreasing the share of the cost of the new building that students will pay. Given that the referendum on the building will be complete in a few weeks, and if passed by students, they will have already agreed to pay for $24 million of this building. How will you convince the university to charge students less than they have already agreed to pay for?
So it's looking at the breakdown of how the referendum, once it goes through, it's a binding agreement, obviously. So we don't want to disagree with binding agreement, but I guess it's talking to the university and talking to the stakeholders that are involved with the building and seeing if there's any way, either through sponsorship or through different options, to see if there's another way to bring that money down from the student side, so that things aren't as expensive for students.
Brian, you have 30 seconds.
With a binding agreement, typically both parties aren't willing to budge on what the agreement states. That's why it's a binding agreement. How do you plan on talking to the university to explain to them why they should put more money in, more than their $10 million that they're contributing to the building, when, if this passes, students have already agreed to the shares that people are paying?
You both have 1 minute for open debate.
So, I guess I'm not sure exactly who the person would be, but I guess that would be something that I would really want to look into and find out who that specific person is that it needs to be to talk about this, to figure out if there are solutions. I find there's always a way to get to a solution, and it's just figuring out who that person is that you have to talk to. So I'm not sure right now, but it's looking into that.
In addition to that, this kind of area has fallen under the president portfolio for the past year. The president has worked on it tremendously to make these agreements along with feds. Are you planning to take away kind of this portfolio from the president position and take it on as your own, when there's a lot of initiatives inside the SLC that need to be focused on and supervised within the VPOF portfolio?
So Jeremy, you have 40 seconds, and Brian, you still have 38 seconds.
I guess it's working with the president as well. I don't think taking things exclusively from different portfolios is always the correct way to go, because as we've seen in this debate, there's a lot of overlap between the positions, and I think it's kind of working with the president and myself, and to see how, because it is really part of the SLC at the end of the day, so it is under the portfolio, any way you kind of slice it.
Perfect. And the other question I have that hasn't really been answered yet is kind of what's the plan for you to advocate to the university for you to get this money or get them to contribute more money, other than just having a conversation with somebody at the university, because it is a binding agreement. It's pretty much set in stone.
You have 11 seconds left, Jeremy.
I guess it's looking with lawyers, sitting down and seeing where the wiggle room in the agreement is. There's nothing. I don't think anything really is set in stone. There's obviously respect for an agreement, but it's seeing what abilities there are.
I need 20 seconds, Jeremy. Brian.
Great. And if the students do agree to pay the $18 million or $24 million, $18 per term, it's really not a large cost for students to have so much more student space on campus, especially for weighing out how much it's going to be to go to lawyers and deal with all the consultation and investigation.
Time. Thank you. The next question is for Brian. In your platform, you say that you would like to ensure that Feds is more conscientious with their spending. You specifically mentioned that you have concerns about the exec transition budget line. This part of the budget is passed through both Students' Council and the Board of Directors. As a member of the current Board of Directors, you voted in favor of the final 2015-2016 budget without asking any questions or raising any concerns about its contents. Why didn't you raise this concern at the time the budget was passed to save students money during the 2015-2016 year?
So that happened at one of the first couple meetings, and I was unable to attend the training session, so I was still trying to get in the swing of things, and I wasn't provided with any extra training. So I was still a little bit on the fence about what questions we do ask, and also I was on a work term in the summer that I wasn't present at the meeting, so unfortunately I had to vote in via online. And going through more discussions with the current exec, there are definitely more viable ways that we can be allocating this money. For example, instead of doing kind of an all-inclusive weekend to a destination, it could be going to a cottage or going to somewhere in Waterloo itself to ensure that the transition's more efficient and cost less money for students, while being really effective, because I really don't want students to think that this transition period isn't important for the new exec coming in.
Jeremy, you have 30 seconds.
So I guess with regards to board of directors, how can you ensure that your transition with feds and board of directors is like the same? Because I guess showing right now, it seems like there was a gap between the board of directors and your opinion right now. So how do we ensure what's going to happen with that?
So you each have 1 minute for open debate.
Perfect. So that relates right into another platform that I have, is about volunteer training and part-time staff training. So ensuring that if somebody does miss a training meeting, that they're followed up on and ensured that they're efficiently and effectively trained on a position. That's a gap that I personally witnessed and experienced, and I think that to minimize that gap, it's to ensure that people are properly trained, even if it's not at the specific training that they can attend at a future date, to ensure that they have enough knowledge and information on what their role fully entails.
Steve, 1 minute.
So I guess when looking at training and also commitment, how can we also, it's important to make sure it's accessible, but how do we make sure that people's expectation of commitment is also there, so that we don't end up with, I guess, a gap? Because I guess what part is on the volunteer and what part is on the organization to make sure that those volunteers are also there and present as well?
Thank you. So, Brian, you have 28 seconds, and Jeremy, you have 34 seconds.
Typically, volunteers do it for intrinsic motivation, but it's at the duty of the organization to provide the most effective and efficient training. I'm ensuring that those volunteers are fully prepared to do their job and what is in their description. So with that, it is definitely a give-take relationship, but volunteers do have that internal commitment, and so the organization definitely has a commitment to provide them with the best resources possible for them to get their job done.
So, Jeremy, you have 34 seconds.
I think that makes sense. I guess for the volunteer training as well, I've also noticed with clubs there's been a big gap for that, and so I just maybe it's working with the internal as well to ensure that the training is implemented through all levels of feds.
You have 3 seconds, Brian. Okay. The next and the last question from me is for Jeremy. Last fiscal year, Fed's commercial services generated over $3 million and served thousands of students, yet your platform does not mention any goals for any of our 6 commercial services. Why did you choose to leave them off of your platform?
I guess when looking at the Fed's commercial services, I was more concerned about kind of allocation and transparency, and also the SLC expansion, because I felt those issues were more crucial to the development of VP Operations and Finance and to what I ascertained as what students wanted. So when I was looking into that, that's kind of how I came across my platform.
Brian, you have 30 seconds.
Because of the no mention of the operations side of the portfolio within the VPOF role, I just kind of wonder if there's maybe like a lack of understanding of the role or even a lack of vision, because the commercial services do have such an integral part to what we provide with students. For example, international news and the bomb shelter are constantly busy and they've been pulling in lots of money. So just kind of, I just question maybe the full understanding of the role.
You each have 1 minute for open debate.
So actually, after I talked to Carly, I really I had some other ideas for commercial services, and also maybe integrating it with the VP internal as well, because I feel like the Bomber, something that Carly brought in was the all ages night at the Bomber to make it more accessible. And I think something that I was thinking about proposing is on the off-peak times for the Bomber, making specials so that clubs could better utilize the Bomber services and other services on campus to better utilize the peak times versus off times so that they're busier more consistently.
So with those specials, for example, Bomber's already operating at such a small margin in terms of kind of the overall operating fees that they do. Where do you see kind of the wiggle room, especially bringing in such large groups? And that Bomber also does a catering rate, because the more food that they're producing, it costs them more money and more time. Where is kind of the wiggle room in terms of offering them the discounted prices on different parts of the day?
So Jeremy, you have 27 seconds, and Brian, you have 33 seconds.
So I guess looking at margins, I mean, it's if it's an off time, they're already paying staff to work, so they're already paying that. So at least they're bringing in revenue when those staff are already working. So it's using the time that's already there and already functioning, but it's making sure it's more utilized, so more people are using it, and therefore there's money coming in, and that's going to pay for the increase in people using the service.
You have 33 seconds still, Brian.
Thanks. So the Bomber it's a good example, but at the end of the day, there's still many other commercial services that Federation of Students oversee and they operate, and there's just is such a lack of kind of goals and ambitions and vision to get even people talking about different options within these services. So I'm just curious as to why there's a lack of vision.
So you have 2 seconds, Jeremy, and 7 seconds, Brian.
I can't answer in 2 seconds, so hashtag ask me on Twitter.
So now we'll take any questions from the audience.
Hi. I'm just actually wondering about how you're going to implement sustainable options into the operations, and how you do that while maintaining, as you said, like razor thin margins of like profit. Especially like I'm thinking of like Bomber wanting to add in like fresh local food is going to be more expensive, and the Bomber doesn't really make that much profit. So.
Thank you, Rebecca. You each have 30 seconds to answer that. And Jeremy's question left, so Brian can go first.
Perfect. Thanks for the question, Rebecca. I think it's part of our duty as kind of up-and-coming citizens within the Waterloo community to ensure that we're operating in a sustainable function with consultation with students as well. That is one big thing that has kind of emerged in terms of sustainable food options. They do realize that they might increase the prices at the Bomber, but at the end of the day, it is more dutiful to ensure that we're providing these options and being responsible for our productions. Sorry.
30 seconds, Jeremy.
So it's looking, I mean, sustainable foods can be more expensive, but it's also looking at creative ways. Maybe there's a sponsorship opportunity to bring in sustainable food. I know there's a Waterloo startup that's starting to try and create sustainable food on campus, and maybe it's looking into how we can bring that into the Bomber.
Thank you. And I have a question from online as well. The question is from Steph. As a GBDA student, why are we paying the same Feds fees when we don't benefit from the majority of what Feds has to offer? And Jeremy, you can start.
So that's a really good question, and it's a really difficult question to answer from a school that has satellite campuses. But it's, I guess, focusing and seeing how we can be more present at the Stratford campus and making, because I think the transportation, bringing students to Waterloo campus means that they can maybe access the campus services better.
Thank you, Brian.
I think there's a really good point being raised here. In addition, it could be providing more resources to students at these satellite campuses to ensure that maybe it's not bringing them to campus because sometimes they just have such a busy schedule, but providing them with services that they may need on these campuses is really important, that sometimes gets forgotten about. So I would definitely advocate to bring more services to these satellite campuses to ensure that they're not forgotten about and they're included in our community and they're getting the most out of their Feds fee.
Thank you. And so that's the end of the VP Operations and Finance debate, and we'll take a quick recess. Oh, sorry. Closing. We just need 30 seconds to change the battery on the camcorder, so hold on. We're good to go. Brian went first last time, so Jeremy, you can go first with your closing statement for 30 seconds.
So part of my platform is really making things more accessible and making Feds more transparent in how we operate. And one of the things that I'd like to bring is more clear graphs and charts. And it sounds simple, but it's pictures to really show people how their $20 million is being spent and how that budget is really being allocated so that people can feel like they have a voice and they share it. Thank you.
Brian, you have 30 seconds.
I think through my experience and my internal knowledge of not only Feds, but also what students have been speaking about for the past 4 years that I've been on campus, I have more of an intimate knowledge of what students actually want, and I can raise these important questions at several meetings within Feds to ensure that these questions are being answered and that students are being served in the right way. So I personally think that I have the skills and abilities to do this.
Thank you. And so now we'll have the president debate. So thank you, and president's turn. Okay, we'll get started with the presidential debate. So you each have 30 seconds for opening statements, and we'll start with Chris.
Hello everyone, my name is Chris Lolis and I am seeking re-election for President of the Federation of Students. I'm running on Team Impact with Sarah, Deanna, and Brian. Prior to being president, I had a lot of experience in Waterloo orientation, which I continue to this day, as well as a lot of experience working with both the Feds and university governance. I've now sat on the University Senate and Board of Governors for 2 years. I'm excited to continue a lot of the projects that I got started on this year, as well as begin a few new ones.
Okay, Rosanne, you can go next.
Hi, my name is Roseanne Quad. I'm running with People's Voice as president. And a main thing for my platform is I really want students to be more aware of what Feds does. Only 5% of the student population voted last year, and I really want to encourage students to get more involved with Feds and let them know that we are here for them and here to support them and stuff like that.
Okay, thank you very much. So our first question is for Chris about mental health. So your platform states that mental health is surely one of the most prevalent issues at UW and that you are constantly discussing what we can do to improve student mental health at every level of this university. However, students' mental health is something that should have constant support throughout their time at university, and they need to see action. What have you done to support students' mental health in your current year, and how will that impact the report you're hoping to create?
So I think we've done a few different things on the mental health front this year. One of the big ones has been discussing with counseling services on campus about their structure and how students can go through the process right there. I know they've done a lot of work on their intake forms, which has historically been a huge problem because people go through such a long process that they just give up. We're also looking at potentially hiring new counselors, as well as starting a new Fed service that will provide peer support for mental health for students on campus.
Rizwan, you have 30 seconds to rebuttal.
So this is a very important issue that I think all of us can relate to in one way or another. And adding on to what Chris has brought up, hiring new counselors and finding new ways to allow students to feel more comfortable to come out and actually talk about the things they're struggling with is something very important.
Okay, so now you each have 1 minute for open debate.
I guess I'll just add something else that I've been slowly starting to work with Engineering Society President, and we're going to hopefully roll out with a number of other societies as well. It's a mental health survey. So there's a survey that's going to go out later this term that looks at all sorts of student wellness, but we want to make sure that we understand students' current state of affairs when it comes to mental health and their experiences going through counseling, and I think that's going to provide very useful collection of data that will help us provide some, data-driven results and some evidence-based results into what we're hopefully going to try and improve on counseling services and mental health on campus.
You still have a minute.
Okay. Something to add on to that, I've been working alongside with an engineering student named Brian and my close friend Emily Mack this term. We're trying to build an app for UW students to allow them to connect with one another and find support. It was mainly focused around mental health issues, and we're still brainstorming on ways to how the app can make you feel comfortable to come out with issues that you're struggling with, and we wanted to make it anonymous. We're still in the development phase, so I can't really speak much on it, but it's something that we've been working on this term and we'd like to continue working on later.
Okay, thank you both. Is that it? You still have 20 seconds, Chris, and 25. Nope, okay. So next question is for Razan. In your platform, you outline a plan where the president and the exec will go around to talk to various students and find out what is on their mind and what is concerning them. However, this past year, Feds implemented Feds on Tour, championed and led by the exec, visiting faculties around campus and satellite campuses over the next, or for the few weeks that it was active, giving students the chance to talk to them about student issues and ask questions. What do you hope to do above and beyond this existing plan? You have a minute to answer.
I think the number one issue here is that students are still unaware when these things are happening. I think I've seen a lot of times on Facebook after an event has happened, then I see it's like, oh, this was actually happening. I wish I could have attended. I would have liked to put in my input. So I'd like to work heavily on updating our Fed's website and updating just a better social media plan as a GBDA student. I have a lot of experience with that to reach all the UW students so that everyone knows what's actually happening and are able to put in their input.
Chris, you have 30 seconds.
I think the Feds on Tour this year was a great start, and I absolutely agree that anything we can do to make sure students are aware of this event before it's happening so they can try and make time out of their day to come visit would be great. But I think we also need to recognize that students are very busy, and sometimes they're just not able to attend an event that's in their neighborhood on campus to come talk to the executive. You need to find other methods that are going to allow students to have this conversation with the executive. Maybe that's electronically, or maybe that's trying to set up more regular office hours, but we need to do other things that aren't
Time.
just...
So now it's open debate, so you can continue if you'd like. You each have a minute.
Sorry, do you mind if I finish my sentence? As I was saying, we need to do other things that aren't just setting up shop for 1 or 2 hours, because and typically students their day is pretty busy and it's difficult to have events that all students can attend. So as I said, we need to find other methods of communication for students to have that conversation with their executive.
You just mentioned something about having office hours, but I'm also aware that holding our position, the position that you hold right now, and all the other executives, you tend to have very busy schedules with meetings and so on. Do you have any other ideas that might be more efficient than office hours?
I think office hours are an important thing. I mean, if a faculty member can find time out of their day to hold office hours, I certainly think student executives can. Office hours aren't time. I want to stress that we're just sitting in our office twiddling our thumbs. When students aren't there, we're constantly working on the projects that we've been elected to do. So I think they're a great method, but as I said earlier, it's only one of a multitude of different methods we need to have for students to talk to their executive.
You still have 45 seconds.
As a GPDA student, every year we have a project that we have to work on, and last year we had to do research for a company called Event Peaks and invent a new social media plan, and that's something that I'd really like done for Feds, and I'm pretty sure GPDA students would be very excited to work on something like that to improve everything that Feds has to offer.
Chris, you have 11 seconds and 20 seconds was on. Good? Okay, if both candidates are done, we'll proceed to the next question. This question is for you, Chris. On your point, restructuring the Fed's executive, how did you establish that reestablishing the VP president reporting structure will allow for more centralized communication and establish efficiencies within the organization? What consultation and evidence have you gathered to support this claim?
Well, I think first we need to look back at Feds used to have this reporting structure, and it was changed a number of years ago. But at no point did we look back and evaluate, was this change for the better? And as far as evidence goes, look at, practically every other organization that has presidents and vice presidents. They all have the similar reporting structure. But I do want to stress that this isn't an attempt for presidents in the future, years down the line, to, control the VPs. The wording in any policies or bylaws that this would necessitate, we'd be sure to keep the autonomy of the vice president so that they're still responsible to do the things that they were elected to do on their platforms and on their action plan. And this isn't an attempt to consolidate power, it's just to provide efficiencies within the organization.
So I've worked for Feds the past 2 terms, and there's a survey that goes out asking you about your bosses and how you feel they treat you and what they can improve on. And that's something that Carly has implemented, which I think is great, and it's something that can be implemented inside Feds as well, where everyone can give each other feedback. Hey, I think you're doing this really well, but this is something that you need to really work on, and that also helps improve communication, and then everyone does better at their job that way.
So now you have a minute for open debate. You can talk about anything, this question, your platform points. Okay, so that's 2 whole minutes of debate. So we'll go on to the next question. This is for you, Razan, for school spirit. The lack of school spirit is an ongoing complaint at UWaterloo, and a lot of students still don't identify with the Warrior brand as a way to promote our school spirit. How do you believe putting a logo on the floor will help change that?
That was just one small addition that I had added to the platform, an idea. It wasn't something that I'm going to hardcore implement, but it's something that I feel like if you see it every day, then you start to have a better connection with it, I suppose. And it just, it helps you feel more represented in, inside campus with your school.
Chris, you have 30 seconds to rebuttal.
Not to get down into the logistics of it, but I think we need to think of a long-term solution for that basement logo. If you go there most days of the week and during the evenings, you'll see dance classes on there just tearing up the logo. I think we need to understand that we need a long-term solution to this. Otherwise, every few years, we're going to be shelling out thousands of dollars to replace the logo. We need to find a more sustainable solution to that.
Okay, so you now have a minute each, so 2 whole minutes of open debate.
Something I can totally agree with, Chris. Maybe something we can do with that is actually put actual dance floors for there, because a lot of the dance clubs and even fashion for change practice down there, and perhaps we can put a logo somewhere else where it's more visible and people won't be walking all over it and making it decay.
I guess I'll talk about other school spirit initiatives. So also in my platform, I talk about a more student-focused homecoming and what that might look like. And while we haven't sorted out the details because it's still many months away and we need to consult with students on that, I think it's a great opportunity for students to connect with their community and have a very typical university experience that we see at many other Ontario universities, where that's one of the highlights of their undergraduate careers. In particular, I think there's an opportunity ripe for the taking for an orientation reunion. I've lost track of how many orientation weeks I've done, but I know into September and beginning October, everyone's got that sense of, man, I really wish I could go back to orientation. I miss talking to my leaders or my first years, and I think there's a great opportunity there to keep that strong sense of community and pride that's present in orientation going throughout the year.
Razan, you still have 40 seconds. Okay, so we'll move on to the next question. This question is for Chris about the SLC PAC expansion proposal. Have you formally collected student input for the initial design of the proposed new SLC PAC expansion? And should it pass, how will you negotiate in details of management control and finalize schematics of the design that supports student interests and needs?
So yeah, we did a lot of student consultation on this. In particular, we used a lot of the results of the proposal that tried to go forward in, I believe, in 2012. There was student surveys, focus groups, conferences, all aimed at determining, what students want in a new student building. As well as this year, when we were starting to develop the proposal, I went and spoke with Students' Council a number of times, as well as a number of student societies and the faculties. In terms of management control of the building, I think it's going to be very similar to the SLC agreement, which is worked out with a few minor tweaks that I'd like to make about it. It's worked out fairly well so far, and it's just naturally going to make sense that if you have an extension onto this building, you'd want to keep it very similar to how this building is currently managed.
30 seconds for rebuttal.
Are we allowed to ask questions right now? Yeah, okay. So I'm trying to think back, and I honestly do not recall much information being given out about the expansion. And I'm just wondering, that's something that happened. So, are you planning on doing something forward with that to allow for more student input?
Absolutely. There's a certain amount of work that needs to go into the proposal so students know what they're voting on. But even after the referendum, hopefully goes through, there's still going to be a lot of work going into finalizing out the details, things that you can't really afford to do before the referendum because you don't want to sink too much resources into the project that hasn't even passed yet. But once it does pass, we do need to finalize, as I said, a lot of the details, and that will be with students in mind because as everyone's well aware, the students are the majority funders of this building by quite a bit, and we want to make sure that students have a say at every point in the process of determining what this building will ultimately become.
You still have a minute of open debate. So that was just your 30-second rebuttal, so you can keep talking if you'd like.
Is that I really support the expansion, and I think our school needs something like this with a great growing population, and it would be nice to just have more open student space.
Chris, you have 20 seconds left.
I'm just going to say I'm really glad that all candidates, I think Victoria's on board with this as well, yes, that all candidates seem to support this project, and elections aside, that hopefully we're able to improve student space on this campus with the SLC PAC expansion.
All right. Anything else for the open debate? Okay. So last question for Razan. Your platform has very specific and short-term goals that could be categorized as special projects. How will you go about supporting student needs within the following areas, such as university government, the Board of Governors and Senate, Feds governance, such as council and board, and student areas such as mental health and orientation?
I'd like to think that there's always room for proper time management, and as president, I am representing the student body as a whole. and I'd want to take in as much input from them as possible, knowing that I'm voicing their opinions in the proper way.
Chris, you have 30 seconds for rebuttal.
Just touching on university governance in there. I know it's not, the most sexiest of topics, but as we saw yesterday with the 9% increase to international tuition, it does have a huge impact on every student's experience at Waterloo. I think this year we've made great strides, in particular with the student senators. We've had a lot more communication amongst ourselves, as well as coordinating and planning about how we're going to go to the meetings, and I'm going to get cut off.
Okay, now it's open debate, so you each have a minute.
And I can continue. As well as having good communication between the student senators as well as the student governors. We were a united voice yesterday when we voted against the tuition increases because we had that strong sense of communication, and we planned out how we were going to go about this topic when it reached the board. And this is also common in Senate as well. With the fall reading break that passed last term, we met a number of times in discussing what our positions were going to be and how we were going to lay out our arguments and how we were going to make the case basically that students who voted yes in the referendum a few years ago, we did want the fall break to go through.
You still have a minute.
I should have written it down, but I was trying to keep track of everything Chris was saying. I was going to add on... It's completely gone.
You can take as much time as you want. You have a whole minute.
So I feel like students are not aware of the student council or any of the councils that are on campus with feds, and that's something that we really need to work on, so students are aware of, like, hey, there's all these councils, and we can tell them what we want as well.
Chris, you have 20 seconds.
Yeah, I think there certainly is a great opportunity for students to get more involved in the committees and councils at the university, because as I said, they do have a great impact on your university experience, as well as it's a great opportunity for students to sort of prepare for higher, more senior roles within the university and within feds.
Okay, thank you, presidential candidates. We're going to turn to the audience now. Is there any audience questions? And we'll look to social media as well. Oh, looks like we have one. Moz, do you want to pass the mic off? Thank you.
Hello. As a member of the Pro-Life Club, it's very important to me that Fed supports all of the clubs on campus, including the controversial ones. So my question is, will you protect free speech, and to what extent?
Okay, thank you for your question. So you'll each have 30 seconds to answer this question, and we'll start with Chris.
I think as we saw with the Sever Ties referendum, Feds isn't afraid to host these controversial discussions because we are protecting free speech. So yes, I do support free speech on this campus. If you have any concerns about the way certain clubs or if there's any infractions about that, I encourage you come talk to one of the executive and make your voice heard.
Rosanna, you have 30 seconds.
I totally agree with everything Chris said. I don't think Feds should ever really hold a stand or pick a side when it comes to these kinds of issues. We're just here to voice your opinions and tell the students, hey, there's this issue, what do you guys think? And yeah.
Okay, thank you. So we're going to turn to social media. I think Carly's going to read a question.
Yes. Oh boy. Okay. So I have a question. Sorry, I'm reading them all. I'm trying to pick because there's a new one right now. I'm going to combine two of them together. So do you have any plans to restructure board or council, and how will you increase engagement with the Fed's elections for those bodies as well as the general election?
Understand the question?
Can you repeat it? Yeah, I know. Okay, so do you have any plans to restructure board and council, and how will you increase voter engagement for both board, council, and the general Fed's election?
So you each have 30 seconds, and we'll start with Razan this time.
I think before we make any decisions about taking drastic changes like that, research needs to be done. We need to know what's working and what's not working, and then proper steps can be taken to that's so sweet, to make sure that the system is improved and it's benefiting everyone.
Chris?
I think as president, we just have to be cautious about suggesting changes to the bodies that we ultimately report to. But I do admit that the council in particular, there's opportunity for change there. And I fully intend, successful or not in this election, to have a sit down with councillors who have become less engaged over the year, as well as with the societies, to figure out how council can, be all it can be. I think there's a real opportunity to partner with the societies because they do have such a high percentage of student engagement there.
Okay, thank you both. So you'll each have 30 seconds for closing remarks now. So we started with Chris before, so we'll start with you, Razan.
Just to close off, I suppose, no matter who wins at the end of the day, I hope everyone votes. I think that's my number one concern. I mentioned before that it was only 5% of the student population voted last year, and that's something that really needs to be improved on. So no matter who you vote for, just vote. And I'm about to get cut off soon. So
my closing statement, I'd like to thank everyone for coming out today. I think it's been a great debate. Thank you for everyone for being so engaged, taking time out of your day to do this. I've personally enjoyed my year as president. I think we've accomplished a lot as an executive team, and I think the rest of Vote Impact has a lot of great ideas. But as Roseanne said, I just encourage everyone to become familiar with everyone's platforms and make an educated decision when they do decide to vote February 9 to 11.
Thank you, and that concludes the Fed's executive debate. I'd like to thank everyone in the audience, everyone on the live stream, all the candidates for coming out, and for Danielle for volunteering her time to come back and be an honorary Feds exec for the day. And I would encourage everyone to vote, everyone in the whole SLC to vote February 9th to 11th. Thank you.
If you guys don't mind staying back and helping us with the teardown, that would be much appreciated. Thank you.
And if your questions didn't get answered using hashtag UW Votes, feel free to ask your candidates, and candidates feel free to search the hashtag.